This episode was recorded on August 28th, 2025. Today, State House Representative Mark Smith is in the hot seat as he campaigns to fill the seat in Congress being vacated by Representative Nancy Mace. We're talking about guns on the heels of a school shooting, as well as his plans to check the national debt. And does Mark Smith harbor any conspiracy theories that we should know about? We're going to talk about it on this episode of We the Palmetto. We talked to Low Country voters. Trump was in true campaign form. Voting is officially underway. Joe Biden spoke here in the heart of downtown.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Representative Mark Smith, thanks for coming in. Thanks for joining me.
Hey, Nick. Thanks for having me in today. This is an incredible opportunity to be here with you and look forward to our conversation.
All right. Well, normally I'm supposed to open things up with some kind of current event or some lighthearted question. I don't know. What do you want to talk about? You want to talk about Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce? That's topical, right?
It does seem to be trending, right? But maybe there's a little something more local. How about where I'm going when I leave here today? How about that?
Sure, let's do that.
Hey, so Nick, I'm so excited that after our interview, I've been working on loosening up my right shoulder a little bit. Mm-hmm. I'm going to have the opportunity to throw out the first pitch at our local River Dogs game tonight, and looking forward to that because that's such an important part of our culture here in the Low Country. We love our Charleston River Dogs.
Now, is this going to be a highlight clip or is this going to be a low light clip? What do we need to be on the lookout for?
Well, Nick, I'm not quite sure it's going to be a fastball, a spin ball, a curveball, but I'm just hoping it gets to the plate.
Well, there you go. Yeah, getting to the plate, that's half the battle, right?
Right, exactly. Okay. Thank you for that.
So in politics for about 12 years now, is that right? You had Mount Pleasant Town Council.
Yeah. So I served on Mount Pleasant Town Council one term, so 4 years there, and I'm finishing up my third term. We're 2-year legislative sessions there, so 5 years behind me there, so 9 years behind me.
Okay. Let's talk about your background just a little bit because you describe yourself as a businessman, not a career politician. Is that right?
Well, absolutely. I've only been a part-time legislator and one term in Mount Pleasant Town Council, and then that we're part-time legislators. Our session is January through May in Columbia, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday.
You already kind of hinted at it, but you've got a wife, you've got 3 kids,
yes, sir.
A dog named Hugo.
Hugo, appropriately named for here. So it's clear that I'm born and raised around here, right? We got the Cumyas and the Benyas. Well, I'm part of the Benyas.
What kind of dog?
It's a German short-haired pointer, Vizsla mix, and Hugo runs the house.
I bet Hugo does run the house. Also on your website, I noticed not many people, at least from what I've seen, not many people like to put in their bios their religious affiliations. You identify, and I assume, a practicing Catholic.
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. I was born right here in the Low Country in Bamberg, South Carolina, raised in the First Baptist Church in Bamberg, and met my beautiful wife in school. She's an Italian Catholic girl and from Springfield, Massachusetts, and I joined, I converted into Catholicism, and we've been going to the Catholic Church over on Daniel Island, St. Clair's. Shout out to Father West and our parish over there. It's a beautiful, beautiful parish.
Sounds like she kind of whipped you into shape.
She definitely did that, and 32 years later, I'm excited to still be hanging around there.
Okay, well, there are a variety of Catholics out there, just like there are everybody. Former President Joe Biden is a Catholic. I assume you guys don't share too many political stances.
It's interesting. It seems like I remember reading some articles about some concerns about him actually being eligible to even receive communion. I can assure you that our political alignment is far from congruent and close to one another, and I haven't been questionable if I'm eligible for communion or not based on my political stances and votes.
Well, there you go. I watched the entirety of your campaign announcement, your campaign speech. I noticed Sheriff Carl Ritchie was there. And lately, you've also gotten the endorsements of a couple of local mayors, Goose Creek, Hanahan as well. When you look at those folks lined up, especially the sheriff, what do you think their support of you says about you as a candidate?
Well, first of all, I'm humbled, Nick, by all the support. Endorsements and campaign signs on the roads don't win elections. Let's just put that out there and be very, very clear. But endorsements are very important. And when a current elected official endorses and puts their name next to yours and says, this is my guy and I'm all in for him, That's a really big deal because everybody brings their circles of influence. And even in neighborhoods, right, when there's elections, there's always that neighborhood influencer. Who should we vote for this particular person? Because let's face it, people are busy, right, living their lives and can't really follow every elected official in every election. So those endorsements really, really matter. Nothing I take lightly. And can I tell you, they've been overwhelmingly rolling in since we made our announcement less than 2 weeks ago. And boy, what a turnout at that launch event. Nick, I was driving to New Realm Brewery on Daniel Island from my home, and I said a little prayer. My wife heard me whispering. I'm like, dear God, sweet baby Jesus, please let 75 or maybe 100 of my family and friends show up for this launch event. And would you know that we took over the whole restaurant? They kept having to open up and expand the area with over 300 people in attendance. It was truly humbling, and I got obviously choked up when I walked in the door and looking out at that crowd and having First Congressman Henry Brown there endorsing me among the ones that you said earlier. It truly was a very special time in my life that I'll look back on with great admiration, and especially with my family there.
Yeah, I've been to a couple of candidate announcements recently. I'm sure you could imagine. Yours definitely seemed very well attended and seemed very. It seemed like there was a lot of energy in the room for sure.
Nick, just the love, the genuine love in that room and support for each other and for my family through all of this. That's really why I'm doing this. When Nancy Congresswoman Mace made her announcement that she was going to run for governor and the seat opened up. Let's face it, we all knew that she was planning to do that, following her on social media for weeks, but we waited for her to make her announcement, not to get ahead of our skis, and then we gave her a week, and then the following week we made our announcement, and it was well organized and well orchestrated, and thank you to everyone that was there, and the continued prayers that we get along the way.
We don't get a lot of polling, especially this early on. The election isn't for another year, right. But all of the folks that I spoke with ahead of your announcement told me that if you do announce that you'll likely be the front runner on the Republican side, and so far I think there are some people that have announced that have not really made it public, but they are sort of in the race. But it sounds like that you are right now kind of fending off challengers. But I do want to talk about your platform a little bit because this is what people need to know when they go to the polls. I noticed on your website, you mentioned, you said, or maybe it was in your announcement, I'm not sure. You said that you want to shake up Washington.
Yes.
What does that mean? I mean, that's something everybody says, but what does that mean?
I love that you went right there to begin with. Thank you for that opportunity. Shaking things up in Washington is exactly what we've seen, right? Last November, Americans sent a very clear message. We are not happy with the direction our country's going in. We want change. And so what our President Donald Trump needs is fighters, someone who's going to come in there and fight for that America's First agenda. And the amount of winning that's happening across the board, from the big, beautiful bill to our borders to law and order within the cities. Look what's happening in Washington, D.C. right now today with the significant amount of feedback. People are saying our city feels safe again. We can move about. So when I say I want to go up there and shake things up, what I'm not looking to do, look at this face. This face is for radio. This is not a face for Fox News. I'm not going to spend any time worrying about trying to get on Fox News or video clips. What the president needs is a workhorse, someone who's going to get up there and do exactly what I've done in Columbia the past 5 years. Don't look at my website and read that or listen to my campaign speech. Do your work, look at my voting record, and see what I have done and the bills that I have led in the State House. They're all parlay right into the top issues that we have here in South Carolina and across the country, certainly leading off with infrastructure, Nick. Aren't you sick of sitting in traffic, and aren't you like all of us? You look at your watch before you leave anywhere to think about where am I going to go, what time of day is it, and I got to plan my commutes around that.
Oh yeah, I got to turn on Google Maps every day just to see what my commute's going to be and when I need to leave. Very taxing for sure. But how do you fix something like that? How do you get the money that we need to build the infrastructure better here?
Well, first of all, let's look at what South Carolina, our state, has done in the state budget. We've recognized and put our money where our mouth is as it relates to infrastructures, both in the urban and the rural areas. So no area across the state has been overlooked on that. So, and where more money is going to come from, and you talked about earlier about what does shake things up mean? Our president is asking for big, beautiful infrastructure projects. What's a transformational infrastructure project we can do? It's not just about expanding roads, replacing bridges. Nick, we got to think about how we're moving cargo. What is the problem today on 526? One of the largest problems, right, is that the amount of truck traffic that we have moving from our ports and sharing the lanes with the truckers, who are so critically important for moving products and goods from place to place to make sure businesses can stay in business. We love our port. We love our truckers association. But what we don't love is sharing our lanes with the truckers when we're simply just trying to get from anywhere on 526, from West Ashley all the way over to Mount Pleasant. So what are some transformational projects we can do for infrastructure? Nick, I'm born and raised here, so I know why we call this place the Low Country, right? I know about pluff mud and how soft and how low-lying areas. I know why we created in the state of South Carolina the Office of Resiliency. Flooding issues are real. We got to get this development and continual expansion of building houses in every nook and cranny under control and have smart growth, and also how we move from place to place. We may need to think about how we're moving some of those containers. With the tremendous opportunity we have with the port expanding over into the West Vaco property in North Charleston, where there's already rail in place, where there's enough footprint acreage in place, we can reimagine and rethink. And imagine, I hate to even go there, but I'm going to say this on this with you, Nick. This is the first time I've said this, so it's coming out here. What if we did something like the Big Dig, right? What if we automated, find some kind of automated way to move containers, not on trucks, but maybe under the water, and over to North Charleston with that short stint there. That's what I believe when we say shake things up and look for transformative projects. There were many people who said the Big Dig and other areas, tunnels couldn't be done either. But I think we need to stop thinking about 5 and 7 years from now, but what is 25, 30 years from now? What does that look like? And let's really think outside of the box from transformational projects as it relates to infrastructure.
Yeah, that's an ambitious idea right there. And I love that you brought up pluff mud because we almost called the podcast Pluff Mud Politics, and I was told by the higher-ups that nobody knows what pluff mud is. It's like, no, but it's perfect.
Nick, we need to revisit that. Maybe I need to write a letter from Representative Mark Smith to the executive to say, hey, revisit that.
Exactly. Okay, I'm going to take a dramatic turn here,
Sure.
because you're a pro-Second Amendment guy.
Yes.
We know this. The president's a big Second Amendment supporter as well. Obviously, we're back to school. We're seeing kids getting arrested for having guns in their backpacks, on their person, in their cars. And then recently, we also had the church shooting up in Minnesota that killed a couple of kids. How far does your support for the Second Amendment go? And how do you deal with these issues, this balance of being pro Second Amendment, but also not wanting guns to be in the hands of people that are going to commit mass shootings?
Correct. Nick, let's go there for a minute. And you can't talk about that without, in the same breath, bringing up the significant issue surrounding mental health issues. We want to make sure the good guys are always armed and able to defend themselves and others around them in any situation. Yes, I'm a strong supporter of the Second Amendment. I'm also a very strong supporter of making sure people understand dealing with the long overdue mental health issue crisis that we're in the country is not a bad word. It used to be we would put Uncle Johnny, who served in the war, who came back, who wasn't quite right, and we wouldn't talk about that, and we would just kind of shun it a little bit. and other family members. But now we have addressed those issues. We're talking about the significance of every element of mental health issues. You know, Nick, what I do professionally. So I, unfortunately, every single day stare death in the eyes and communicate with the survivors of these tragic incidents right here in Charleston, many times as well, not just across the country. These are real issues that we got to talk about. So going back to your original question, Mark, how can you be such a strong Second Amendment guy? Well, easily. One, as I said earlier, we want to always make sure we follow our constitutional rights. We have that a right in our amendments to bear arms. We want to make sure we continue to honor that. That is not a living, breathing document. That is something we want to make sure we continue to fight for. We also need to make sure in these school situations, and our heart and prayers and thought go out to all the families involved in that. I mean, they are literally dealing with that as we speak here today. Significant issues. Nick, in South Carolina, you know that we have in the budget 100% of the funding is in place to make sure there's a school resource officer in every school. In some schools, there's funding that's been put in place, and the districts even matched it and expanded it to include like metal detectors at the front entrance of doors. We also know right here in the Low Country, Nick, this is going to blow you away. There's a company called R2P.
Yeah, the door company that makes the bulletproof doors.
The ballistic proof doors. Do you know that in Washington, D.C., under the previous administration, there are ballistic proof doors that are being installed in every House member's office and every Senate member's office that cost the American taxpayers over $300,000 a piece. So, Nick, if we do the math, right? 435, 100. So we're going to pay that much money to keep our elected officials safe. What about our children? What if we spent that same amount of priority instead of protecting ourselves as elected official, of which I would have never supported, use that money, and R2P has already publicly stated we can retrofit and have doors put in schools that cost $10,000 a piece. How many doors, I mean, just one door in D.C. at $300,000, and there are some doors up there that have been custom, Nick, that cost over $1 million based on the species of wood and the gold inlay that's put in it. Now, I'm not sure what kind of palace we're trying to build up there for elected officials in D.C., but I certainly want no part of that, and I would want to make sure that we're spending that money. And I'll just end with this. When we talk about protecting our children in schools, what's the first thing our combat veterans are taught when they're under fire? One of the first things is seek cover, right? And return. So when a gunman goes into any of our schools, where's the cover? Where's the cover for our children? Our most precious asset that we have, and our teachers and the faculty and staff. You know who's a leader right here in the Low Country and should and deserves a shout out? Is Christ Our King School in Mount Pleasant. Are you aware that they've already installed bulletproof doors in all of the classrooms in Mount Pleasant at Christ Our King?
I didn't know that. I would say that, when CCSD looked at R2P a couple of years ago, it was prohibitively expensive to put in these doors. And at the time, they also argued that it's one small part of a room. If you make the door bulletproof, you need to make everything else bulletproof as well. The point being is that it can be difficult to get that kind of thing done.
Well, I guess everything is difficult when you look at it from that perspective.
Sure.
But from the perspective I'm looking at it from, what's the value of one life?
Right.
What's the value of one life? One child being protected and being able to stand behind a door that is ballistic proof. And we already know, what did our law enforcement say in every recount of these events when an active shooter goes into a school? Seconds matter. So, no, we don't start there. But at some point, Nick, we had a conversation about fireproofing schools. And guess what a requirement is of schools now? Sprinkler systems.
You make a good point.
Fireproof fabric being in there. So when elected officials and bureaucrats decide enough is enough, we're going to prioritize the safety of our children and not say that it's unachievable or unaffordable, that's when we start talking about transformative projects in our community. I fully support it.
So let's talk about finances for a moment, because as a businessman candidate, I know that you're well versed in how we spend and how we save money here. In fact, in your initial campaign announcement, you took a moment to basically say, if we drop the income tax to zero and then we raise the property tax, it doesn't make any sense. It doesn't work, and it's kind of attractive to tell voters we're going to drop the tax, and get those votes. But at the national level, right, I think we have something like a $37 trillion debt nationally, and this has been an issue for as long as I have been alive, if not longer.
Both of us, actually.
Yes,
yeah.
Exactly. How do you bring that kind of common sense financial mindset to DC? Can you bring down the debt? Would you ever support a budget bill that isn't balanced?
Nick, you just hit the nail on the head. First of all, South Carolina, what we do in South Carolina is a great role model. DC could learn a lot from us because we do have a balanced budget amendment. We can't spend more than we're bringing in. So the allocations of those dollars, you talked about taking our income tax. I wanted to go back to that comment you said earlier, taking our income tax down to zero. Inevitably, you'll get a standing ovation every single time when you stand up and say, I'm going to fight for and get our income tax down to zero right away. That's great in the moment, but a gentle reminder, ding, 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 the government doesn't make any money. It doesn't produce the money here in South. We take money from the taxpayers, and then we bring that in, and then we spend that money and allocate it and spend it back. So first and foremost, every single dollar that's paid to a municipality that goes to Columbia, that goes up into D.C., needs to be treated and get back to the basics with the sacred trust that it is, just like you do in your home, just like I do in my business. Now, is there waste, fraud, and abuse? More platitudes and talking points that you'll hear on the campaign trail, plenty. I'm going to get in there and cut waste, fraud, and abuse. Okay, that's great, but how are you going to do that? Where are you going to do that? So if I were to tell you I'm going to take the state income budget, income tax down to zero, that's $70 billion. So $70 million. So do you want to take that from Department of Education? Do you want to take it from mental health? Do you want to take it from DOT, where we're already woefully behind? So that money, those monies have got to be reallocated and identified from somewhere. Now we can play the smoke and mirrors game where I tell you I'm going to take your income tax down to zero, but then in the same breath I'm going to whisper, but we're going to increase your property tax. And guess what? Sales tax is also going up because I know I got to make up that lost revenue. The same concept that I go through that example because that's exactly what we need to do in DC. This isn't difficult. Columbia is no different than I run my business. It's no different than I run my home. You cannot spend more than you bring in.
Well, let me get your plan for healthcare. But big issue every year. How do you make sure that folks are going to be able to have access to healthcare, especially with the one big beautiful bill making removing some of the funding that goes towards Medicare and Medicaid? What's your plan? How do you reassure folks that they're not going to lose their health care? They're still going to have access to a hospital.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first of all, the collaboration and working together, one of the critical reasons why you should consider voting for Mark Smith and sending me to D.C. to be your next congressman is because of the work myself and my colleagues have already done here in South Carolina. Look what we did with focusing on access to quality care that's physician-driven, tied directly to quality of patient care outcome. by eliminating the certificate of need repeal. That is going to forever change healthcare delivery for citizens right here in South Carolina. You mentioned earlier, and you know that I'm born and raised in Bamberg, South Carolina, small rural area. Nick, my family and community hospital is one of the many that shut down and closed. And that's not unique to Bamberg. That's happening all across the state. But what we did after eliminating the certificate of need was quickly come behind that and have the Telehealth Act done so that we can have thriving hospitals in different communities, create through telehealth follow-up visits in these rural areas, and partner with community assets already in place, like libraries, like senior centers, where seniors are already going. We can put a telehealth cart in those areas. And then right after that, we gave the hospitals another opportunity for the hospital at home program. Nick, how do I ensure that citizens are going to continue to have access to health care? Is the exact same thing that we've been doing with examples here in South Carolina.
The president is obviously very much ran on in the last election, cracking down on illegal immigration. I know it's a huge part of your platform, huge part of your campaign announcement as well. I just wonder, though, how far that support for crackdown on immigration goes, and whether or not you have a plan to address, groups of people like dreamers and folks that have been here their entire life, but aren't considered citizens. Do those people need to go back to the country that their parents came from?
Listen, thank you for being able to talk about the illegal immigration and the unfettered access that we had in the previous administration along our borders. When President Trump campaigned, he said he was going to do something, and day one he went to work and he delivered on that. So the significant amount of illegal immigration pouring in across our borders is no longer the case. And these first more than 100 days in the office, we appreciate, and it is a new day. Nick, I don't think we need to create new laws on the books. What you've heard before and what the president has said, I agree with and I support. We simply need to enforce the laws that are on the books. We need to hold all of our border control folks accountable. We need to hold all the local folks. We need to make sure we're funding our immigration offices, and we need to make sure that all of the pathway that generations before us, we're all immigrants when we think about the beginning of this country, right? There is a pathway for people to come into the country. Even those that have been here for a while, we need to make that are on work visas. And here, we need to make sure we're honoring the laws that are on the books and upholding those laws. Because, Nick, how do you say we are a land of law and order, and then you continually exempt these folks because they're from this zip code? These folks are going to be exempt because they're from the right neighborhood. We got to make sure it's beneficial and fair and enforced to all concerned.
But so the folks, though, that are here, who have been here since they were babies, been here 20 years, do they go back to whatever country that their parents are from, or do they need to go through a court system? What do we do about those folks?
So here's exactly what I'm talking about. We don't need to create a new pathway for them. They need to go through the pathways and the laws that are already existent.
Apply for citizenship.
Correct.
Okay.
That's the path to become an American citizen. And because you decide to continually speed down the highway and you get caught one day, you're going to pay the speeding ticket. Why should you be given a pass out of it?
Okay, I've got one more very briefly. I don't think this will take very long at all. But
sure.
I read somewhere that you are a supporter of term limits. Now that you're running for SC1, are you still on board with term limits for Congress vote?
100%.
What should it
term limit.
be?
So, I'm 55 years old. I signed the term limit pledge. It's easy to sign the term limit pledge when you're in the state house, right? But then when you run for Congress, it's like, did I really mean that? Well, hear me say on this podcast, and I'll put it in writing everywhere, I 100% agree with that. And I think it's a 2-year term. When we look at the Senate, it's a 6-year term. So 2 terms in the Senate is 12 years. I think probably 4 or 5 terms in the House to equal 2 terms in the Senate. You should serve those terms and probably move along to the next term.
That's plenty.
only served one term on Mount Pleasant Town Council, and I will have served 3 two-year terms in the State House. So looking backwards, my history says that my deed matches my creed. I walk out what I say.
All right, let's wrap this up here. You've kind of followed Nancy Mace through the political career in terms of you took her seat in the State House, and now you're aiming for her seat in Congress. I'm just curious if you guys have had any kind of professional relationship. Did you talk to her at all before you decided to run, or does her opinion just not matter at this point?
Yeah, I guess when we focus on that question, she was the most recent one in the State House. But in the same question, you have to ask me, to be fair, did you talk to Congressman Henry Brown? Henry Brown also served in that same House seat and then went to Washington. We could also say, rest in peace, our cousin Arthur Ravenel served in the House and also went to Congress. So, no, I did not have a detailed conversation with Congressman Mace about my political plans to run. We all saw her tweets and her social media that she had announced she's running for governor weeks before she made it official. So we talked about the opportunities. We met as a family. I met with my campaign team, and we decided that after she made that announcement, and as I said earlier, we are honored to have Congressman Henry Brown's endorsement and continue to have him as part of our WISE Council.
Well, I mean, you don't need her consent, approval, or comment to
so
do
we're going to let
political ambitions.
We're going to let Congresswoman Mace focus on her race, and we're going to focus on ours.
Yep.
And clearly, our leadership styles, when you look at how she leads and governs, and mine are entirely different.
I was going to ask you about that, but I think you covered it there. I want to get to your pitch to voters. This is the very last thing we do. But before we do, one more little fun question for you here. I'm just curious, and I don't know anything necessarily about this
Who you
at
kidding?
all.
You don't know anything, Nick. Who you kidding?
I'm curious if you have any hot takes out there. If you put stock in any of the conspiracy theories, or if you've got a hot take about anything. I read somewhere that 41% of folks believe that there's a cabal that runs the entire world. So what's your hot take? What's your conspiracy theory?
My conspiracy theory is rooted in faith and what I do for a living, Nick. It's a short run for all of us. We're all going to be dead a lot longer. We're going to be alive. Don't sweat the small stuff, and get right with your maker and do as much good as you can, everywhere as you can, for as long as you can. And I'll leave all the tinfoil hats and conspiracy theories to those who are going to spend that time worrying about that. Meanwhile, I'm going to focus on being the best family man I can, the best businessman I can, and the best legislator I can.
I hope that that's not a hot take, because that should be standard operating procedure for everyone, I think.
Amen.
Okay, give us your pitch to voters here. Your final word, your closing statement. Why do people vote for you?
You know, Nick, thank you again for this opportunity to be here. I'm born and raised right here in the Low Country. I didn't move here from out of state. I've spent my entire professional career here, raising my family in the Low Country. 3 beautiful sons, a proven business leader, a first-generation small business owner who's grown his small business from 3 locations to 9. And I did that by being a collaborator and realizing that a rising tide lifts all boats and trying to help people. I'm a true living, breathing example that the American dream is not dead. I ran for Mount Pleasant Town Council because I was frustrated with elected officials not understanding the concerns of the business leader. I ran for Mount Pleasant Town Council because I wanted to make a difference for my family and my business and my community. Don't listen to anything I'm telling you on this campaign trail. Look at my results and look at my path, and if you want to know how someone's going to behave in the future, look what they've done in the past. I'm very proud of my conservative, proven leadership record in the State House, and I would love the opportunity to earn the folks' vote in the next June primary to become their next congressional member of the 1st Congressional District in D.C. And I promise and pledge to you, the same mark you've been getting over the few years in the State House is the same mark you're going to get there.
All right. Well, he doesn't have any thoughts on Taylor Swift, but he's got a whole vision for the country ahead. Mark Smith, thanks for coming in.
Nick, thank you very much, and thank you for this opportunity. And that website is votemarksmith.com.